I'm okay. I think it's really powerful to see like, yeah, like this guy lost his weight, but he's there and is strong now. And like, it could take 2 decades, for someone to find their way, and it's okay.
Yes.
Coming your way.
Off air, we're talking about spiritual things. And as we're sitting down to do our business episode, we just say, look, like, we need to get this off our chest, all the spiritual things we're feeling, all the things we're experiencing. And so we had a good topic today. We talked about faith. We talked about the things that are going on in our lives today, and a little bit of our testimonies. It's really nice.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to talk about your testimony, talk about what you believe in every once in a while.
This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up.
Okay, we're doing the testimony podcast. Okay,
On that note,
these are last days, and it's getting harder and harder. It's getting harder and harder for people to keep their testimonies.
yeah, it's cool. We're reading the Book of Mormon right now about Korihor,
Yeah, the Antichrist.
right? Ezram, right? Those guys. And if you go in those scriptures, it's all playing out, right? All the same, philosophical questionings, right, are coming out. We know that there's going to be a lot of loss of faith, right? We know that the last shall be first and the first shall be last, right? So it's shocking, but it shouldn't be surprising to see the people that have strong roots, Christian ancestors, ancestors in the church. It's like the first shall be last. Like, we know that there's going to be atrophy because of the pride cycle.
Right.
But what a great opportunity for missionary work to have a promise from God in the scriptures that the last shall be first, right? To bring anyone who's willing into the feast, right? Like, I think about the scripture story where the guy, he's like bidding his servant. He's like, go call all my neighbors and I want them to come share a feast with me. One guy says, oh, I can't. My wife needs me. Oh, I can't. I have my oxen. Oh, I have to work on my real estate. One of them's real estate. I know that. Yeah. You gotta be willing to put God above real estate. So
Wow.
that can be tough for some people.
Wow.
But now's the feast. He's compelling everyone to come. A lot of the people you would hope would come, you'd expect to come, aren't going to come. And he doesn't care. He brings the beggars in so that he comes back to the master. He's like, hey, all those guys, they said no. They made excuses. He's like, okay, go get everybody. Go get all the beggars, everyone off the streets. Like, we're welcoming everyone in. So I think, while it can be hard, I think there is a great, calling. I think the humble in heart are finding the gospel, and the church is still growing, right? It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch people that, for various reasons, some of them we talked about, like, this came up because we're seeing it in our own lives, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard to see people that have pretty good reasons, like things that you and I have never gone through, that we don't have that same sympathy that Christ has for them, right? So it's like, for us, like, all we can do is give them some grace and understand that we know that between death and the resurrection, they're going to get the same opportunities that we had in this life, and everything will be made right. So there's going to be, all opportunity will be made equal, and life is long. Like you just said this, that give people a couple decades, like thing about God is he doesn't operate on our time. He's not worried about things on our time. Time is just a function that God created for us in this life to prove ourselves. It's a function of mortality.
Yeah, it's every once in a while we get the chance to have a bigger perspective, like a longer term perspective. In the church, we use the term like eternal perspective a lot. And for me, I am in a neighborhood with a lot of older, retired individuals, and it's really powerful to me when I see someone, and this happens more than once. There's like 5 people in my church congregation that I go to right now that are like, yeah, I lost my faith, I lost my way for 20 years, wow. 30 years. Like, and these are real examples. Like, yeah, I didn't have anything to do with religion for 25 years. And to see them now, where they're at now, and it just puts things in perspective because I'm just seeing them and who they are now. And
in the one moment. Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I think that like you're saying, like giving grace to everyone's journey and where they're at in their journey and how long it takes them to get to where they need to be. I think he's in the long game. He's there in the long game, and he knows that there's ups and downs that we have to go through in this life. And this is a test. Like there's things that we have to be tested. Like there's things that are going to try us to make or break us into better people.
Yeah.
And to like more godly. But I just think it's amazing that like, I'm okay. I think it's really powerful to see like, yeah, like this guy lost his way, but he's there and is strong now. And like, it could take 2 decades, for someone to find their way, and it's okay.
Well, it's good to remember that perspective. It's good to know like your job is not to force anyone to do anything. Right. Your job is to love and be there and also live a life that has the Spirit. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's a scripture in the Old Testament that I really like. It's like, bind up the law and seal the testimony, or seal the testimony and bind up the law. But it's basically like, don't ever interact with someone and not bring the Spirit into that situation. That's your job, right? I
love that.
It's like, your job is to share what you believe and what you know, and let the Spirit do the rest, right? Because you don't try to force anyone. You just proclaim the gospel, and it will ring true, right? That's a big deal.
That's cool. I'm getting goosebumps. I just listened to Follow Him, and they had a guest on. I can't remember her name, but she is a professor of sort, and she was telling the story of on her mission in Europe, and how she started like really getting involved in like Bible bashing, and getting really caught up into it. And she remembers like getting very, very, so she's a scriptorian now. She's like highly educated, like PhD, that's her thing. And on her mission, she said she got very, very good at like she could just whip out scripture. She memorized, like she was very, very good. And she focused on it. Like she was just like so focused on it. She told this experience how she was like on the, square and like ran into someone and they started like Bible bashing, and she just like boom, 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 just like totally like destroys this person. And she just she remembers like her in like her Bible bashing like moment, and having like an elder come and like put her hand on her shoulder and be like, you need to wake up. Like this girl is bawling right now. And it turns out that this girl she was Bible bashing had just joined her church and decided to share her faith and testimony in Jesus Christ, and was out on the block and gets into not our church, another church. She joined their church that they were doing this Bible bash. So she was a new convert to a different church.
Oh.
A new convert to a different church. So she just joined this faith that wasn't our faith. It wasn't our religion, our faith in Jesus Christ. Right. We share the same. But she just destroyed. And this is her first date. And she's just like bawling her eyes out. And she said that day on, like she made a promise to herself that she'll never do anything contentious ever again. And that's not the way. It's not that's not from God.
Yeah.
And anyways, I just reminded me of that story. It was really, really cool because it's cool that she was vulnerable and like shared that. But again, I think that us having, like you're saying, going back is just having grace in people in their situations. Like you just never know. And I think God's playing the long game. But one thing that like I believe and like I, know to be true, and I believe really, really strongly in it, are the covenants that God has made with men and women on this earth. And that's something that I, will hold strong to for the rest of my life, for those covenants. And the scary side of this is I believe that God has made a promise to everyone living in this country, a promise to this country, that it's recorded in the Book of Mormon. There's a covenant with people who live in this country. And the promise is that as long as we believe and follow and revere God in this country, and you can help fill in the gaps, but we keep God's commandments in this country and we will prosper and we will be protected and safe. Like this will be the greatest powerhouse on planet Earth as long as we keep the covenants with God. But as soon as we don't keep those promises and the commandments that God has given us, this country will be like Rome in a day. Even this great country could collapse and be destroyed or be taken over. Who knows? It's happened over and over in the Bible. That, for me, is like, it's so tough because you just wish that in the good times, like when we prosper, this is the price tag you're talking about. When we prosper and we're doing really, really, really well, it's in that time when we're comfortable that we tend to turn our backs on God and turn backs on our values and turn backs on keeping the commandments. Now, we're not perfect, and everyone's we're gonna be going through these ebbs and flows and trying to get back on track and maybe get distracted, get back on track, get distracted. So, can't judge anybody for what they're doing, what they're trying to do. But I just hope that like, I believe in that. And it's tough because I just hope we can somehow, I don't want, what I'm saying is I don't want like something catastrophic to happen to wake us up. Like to wake everyone up to follow God. Like you said, you're going to have a humble enough heart. You're going to have to be humble enough to be able to to follow and stuff. And history says that as humans, we need something catastrophic to wake us up. We need something hard to just like remind us to pray. And I hope you
hope we can stretch it a few more years. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, buddy. I mean, it's obvious. Like you look at your clock, you're like, we haven't had a big war in a while. It's like, hopefully that lasts another 80 years,
Yeah.
But who knows, right? I think it's a big deal. Like whenever I think about the big picture on faith, right? And you spoke really well about just like giving people grace, being good to them. Like sometimes it can be hard for us to be patient, but I think Elder Stevenson gave a great talk about, that bridge and loving God and loving our neighbors, and how really to keep the commandments, you have to do both. And some people are imbalanced, but so I like that a lot. For me, I always think of this spiritual experience I had when I was on my mission, and I never really paid attention to the hymns until my mission. Or at least, like you have like the ones that everybody knows, but then you have like the rest of them. I don't know if you remember this, just like, oh yeah, now I know. Like you go on your mission, like 5 hymns, and then you start paying attention, like almost all of them.
Yeah, things just are different.
Yeah. So I was sitting in my apartment, and my companion was like, he was getting ready for the day or something, so it was just me in the room. And I had some music on, and it was the hymn "How Firm a Foundation," and it just like hit me, like it struck my heart, like, man, I know that this is what the words are saying. It's so true. How firm a foundation, saints of the Lord. Let me just pull it up just for old time's sake, just so I don't mix up the verses.
Can you sing it?
I actually sing this to my daughter every night.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So this is like part of my ritual. So when I'm gone, like I only get maybe, we pull up How Firm a Foundation on your phone. So I only get like maybe a couple hours with my daughter most days at night. Right. And then I put her down. That's like, it's like an extra 20, 30 minutes of just spending time together. And it lets my wife free up a little bit, right? How firm a foundation, you saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word, right? So, like, I'm just going to dissect this, right? The foundation is already laid out, right? He already has his excellent word laid out. What more can he say than to you he hath said? All right, that's a big deal.
We might brush past those words.
Oh, we almost, like, this experience was the first time I hadn't brushed past those words. It's like, what more can he say than to you he has said? You have all the scriptures. You know how much power, like, do you know how much life-changing words are in the New Testament? Forget the rest of the scriptures. Those words in red from Jesus, forget even the full New Testament, just the Gospels. It's like, if that is not enough to read that and have it pierce your heart, read it again, because all the words are there. So for me, when it says, what more can he say than to you he hath said? It's like, look, if he gives you, obviously there's people who haven't received the gospel, but for those who have been exposed to it, if he gives you any more, it's almost going to be too easy. It's going to frustrate the plan of salvation. Like, one of the big doctrines I like is that, like, when people ask why life is hard, it's like, well, if you got blessings immediately when you did good things, or you got punished immediately when you did bad things, plan of salvation is frustrated. There's no faith, there's no growth, there's no greatness pulled out of you. So when it says, what more can he say than to you he has said? It's like, I don't think there is any more he could give us without making it a little too easy. It's like the balance of giving us enough to know that he's there without taking away our faith. That's a big deal to me. Who unto the Savior for refuge hath fled. In every condition, in sickness and health, in poverty's veil, or abounding in wealth, right? People get up and down. If they're poor, they blame God. If they're rich, they forget God. At home or abroad, on the land or the sea. Here's another part I really like. As thy days may demand, so thy succor shall be. So God isn't going to give you anything you can't handle. And I know that we've experienced lots of people that have been given things that are above our imagination, that it's hard to look someone in the eye and say this, but it's there in the scriptures. It's like, as thy days may demand, so thy succor shall be. So in other words, everything that God deals with or has dealt you, or anything life has dealt you, your succor will be equivalent. Whether it takes years or decades to catch up, it will catch up. Whether it takes your faith into the next life, those blessings will catch up and make all things right. Okay. Then the famous verse, fear not, I am with thee, be not dismayed, for I am thy God and will still give thee aid. I'll strengthen thee, help thee, and cause thee to stand, upheld by my righteous omnipotent hand. Right? That's just more of a promise of, look, I'm with you. Like, whatever you're going through, I will help thee, strengthen thee, everything. But the most powerful verse is verse 7. It says, the soul that on Jesus hath leaned for repose, I will not, I cannot desert to his foes. That soul, though all hell could endeavor to shake, I'll never, no never forsake. And that just hits me, because it's like, I feel like I've been given so much from the Lord, and I feel like I have had to lean on him for repose. Like, what I take that to mean is, like, I need him. I've had to lean on him. I've made so many big mistakes, and I put everything on him. I've leaned on him, and it's like, I'm too deep. I'm too deep. I've been given too many miracles. I have too many, heroes, good friends, spiritual experiences, miracles. Like, I can't desert now, right? Like, I'm fully committed. That soul, though all hell, should endeavor to shake. And I'm not trying to jinx myself, but like, hell is going to come for everybody. It's going to be there. Everyone's going to have some really tough times, some big faith crises, some big trials, but we just can't forsake. So like that hymn, it really strikes me. It brings up everything from trials, from being suckered in trials, from having integrity towards your faith and not, like God doesn't have to give you any more answers than he's already given you, to that loyalty piece at the end. So I don't know, like for me, I sing that song every night to my daughter. Like it's always kind of like my anthem, and I think it's a big deal. Like in these times, you have to decide if you have that level of faith and commitment, and it's just it's what I lean on. One of the things I lean on.
Wow, I love that. Thanks for sharing all that. I think that's really powerful. I think that I feel like I'm at a point in my life where like it doesn't bother me or it doesn't hurt me to hear if something happens with someone else, or if someone like maybe loses their faith or goes down or makes a mistake, because I feel like I feel and know what I know to be true. And so, and like I said, I know that like there's more, and there's a plan, and that the Lord's working on all these things. So it's like I can sympathize with people and the situations they're going through, and I can't really put myself in their like shoes, because I'm not in those shoes. And but it doesn't hurt me or where I'm at or make me doubt if like I'm where I should be or doing the things that I should be doing. I know that there's things that can be tough with like life, and it's just so hard to cope with and deal with. And even with relationships and like cultures that we create. I love to look back and think of like the New Testament and how the church, God's church he established through Moses, that was carried on for so many years. It was that very church that rejected God himself, like Jehovah himself, because they got so distracted with certain things. And as long as we don't get like caught up in all these other little things, and we focus on like what matters absolutely most, we focus on like the gospel and our testimonies and the things that are true, then that's really all you can do, and there's always going to be people making mistakes.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people who are, like, that or people you might look up to, or people that have been faithful and that fall away. And it's just, you got to focus on what's true and the truth and testimonies that you've received over the years.
Yeah. What if an apostle falls away? Happened in New Testament times.
Well, it's prophesied to happen again.
Yeah.
It's supposed to happen again, and it'll be pretty bad. Like it'll be like and we may have already had one fall away, actually.
We've had 70 fall away. Oh, we've had apostles fall away in this dispensation, not in our lifetime.
You mean Joseph Smith's times?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're supposed to have
actually quite a few.
Yeah, we've had quite a few.
And I'm saying, but if it happened today, would it shake you? It's like that would shake a lot of people.
Well, I know there was a lot of shaking when like when certain representatives of the church like got a vaccine, and it's like shakes a lot of people. And it's like, it doesn't really like I'm going to choose what I'm going to choose and what I believe in, and it's like, hey, that doesn't have anything to do with the gospel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, you brought up the core doctrines, right? Which is something that in the story of Korihor. So he brings up all of like these things like, ooh, you're going to get gain. And he basically throws out like all of these doubts. And I think what can be tempting is like you said with that lady who's Bible bashing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can turn into a game of whack-a-mole where it's like people bring up doubts, we try to smash. People bring up doubt over here, we try to smash. Like you're just playing like one goes down, another pops up. Because really, if you're bringing up like all these doubts and someone rattles off a bunch, it's like, okay, is there one of those that if I resolve your concern, it's going to change and you're going to be back in the church? It's like, okay, well, like maybe we should find some common ground. Thank you. We got Micah on his first producing job. He's doing great. Micah, say hi. What's up, guys? Micah says hi. So he brought up the scriptures, right? So, Alma 30, he's bringing up, how do you know of this vain and foolish hope? Why do you look for a Christ? No one can know what's to come. You call these prophecies, but they're the foolish traditions of your fathers, right? You cannot know that there's a Christ. It's the effect of a frenzied mind. It's all in your head, right? So he's bringing up he's like rattling off all these concerns, and it's very instructive. He brings them back to the core. What you just said, like, don't get distracted with it. Focus on the core doctrine. He says, okay, Alma 30, he calls him out on a couple things, but then in 37, he's like, do you believe in God? In verse 37, and he answered nay in verse 38. It's like he's kind of bringing him back to like, hey, let's find some common ground. He's being a little more sharp, but like what we could do in our day is like, hey, like before we argue about peripheral things, like just so let's make sure that we all believe in God in the conversation. And then if not, let's work on that. Let's make sure we all believe in Christ. Let's start with the very core foundation and work our way out, right? Because I think we'll find that there's a lot of these core things that we kind of have to find common ground on first before we get caught up in the peripheral things. And I think not that there's really an easy way to have a conversation with someone like that, but it's a good way to start, is like finding some common ground at the core with God and Jesus, and then kind of work your way out from there.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And we don't do that enough. In today's society. It's not about finding common ground and doing that. It's about how can I destroy my opponent.
Yeah.
And so it's these principles that we have like in scriptures and things like that, like they're good, and you can know if something is true by their fruits. And it's like that everyone always wonders, like, how am I supposed to know right from wrong? How am I supposed to know if something's good, or how am I supposed to navigate the world? And I think this is in 3 Nephi, Christ himself here instructing those in America, that's in the Book of Mormon. He's like, you'll know them by their fruits. That's how you'll know things are good. I can plant a seed, and if it grows and it produces good fruit, then it was a good seed and it's a good tree. And you'll know by the taste if it's a bitter or sweet. And if I plant something and it grows bitter fruit, you'll know. And I think a lot of times, like, I remember when I know a couple, a person who really, really got shaken up when they watched the Netflix documentary on the polygamist.
Yeah.
Keep, sweep, pray, and obey.
Oh yeah.
And so I know someone who got really, really shaken up from that, because it was like you're watching outside in, and you just wish you could shake the person. You're like, they're being like they're stuck in this
yeah. They're brainwashed, obviously victims. Yeah.
Victims. I mean, and then what happened to this individual is like, am I a victim? Am I brainwashed?
Sure.
And especially because there is a historical, 100-year ago tie to our organization, their organization. It's even closer to home.
Right.
Like, are you brainwashed? Which is what people say. So the point is like, when I was talking to that person, like trying to help navigate, and it's like, well, what are the fruits that are being produced from that? Because it's like, well, how do I know if it's true? It's like, are they teaching you, like, Are they teaching you XYZ? Like it starts good. Like they plant a seed that looks like it looks like all the seeds look the same, looks like a good seed. And then it grows and it starts sprouting and it starts growing and it looks like a good seed. And then when you taste that fruit, they're like, it's like, are they at the end, are they asking you to eat babies? Like, like that's a bad thing. Yeah. Like if no matter where you started and it turns into something like that's a bad thing. Like that's a bitter fruit. This is actually, we're studying this right now in Alma 32 and Come Follow Me. But, this is actually the faith description in Alma 32, which there's a like a farm and seed, like a physical parable representation of faith. This says we compare the word unto a seed. Now, if you give place that a seed may be planted in your heart, behold, if it be a true seed or a good seed, if you do not cast it out by your unbelief, that you will resist the Spirit of the Lord, behold, it will begin to swell within your breasts. And when you feel these swelling motions, they will begin to say within yourselves, it must be that this is a good seed, or that the word is good. For it beginneth to enlarge my soul, yea, beginneth to enlighten my understanding, yea, beginneth to be delicious to me. He does the exact same thing. It's taught again, I think, in 3 Nephi. But it's true. Like these things, they talk about some of those cults. Like think about some of those cults, like the Kool-Aid, the most famous one.
Yeah.
Like they get into these groups, and then like eventually they ask you to, like, I don't know, like do something,
do terrible things, sell all your property and give us all the money. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, what is being produced? Are these things good that are being produced? And you'll know, like you'll be able to know.
No, I love the parable of the seed. I love the parable of the sower.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Try to be good ground and be ready to receive the gospel. So I think it's a big deal. I think it's very important, like that we keep people in mind, and that we know that this is going to be an issue that we're going to be faced with, but we can hold on. And I was talking to my deacons in young men's, my young men that I work with at the church, and I just told them, like, hey, look, like when I was a deacon, almost everyone that was in my quorum, I thought they'd always be in the church. They're almost all gone. And then you go on your mission, right? And you're like, there's no way any of these people could ever lead the church. And then you get home and people start to leave. Then you go to your YSA ward and you're like, okay, everyone, they've all made it. And then they get married and you're like, okay, they made it all the way through. Now they're married. Everything's good. And then you still see that happen. And it's like, man, what's the difference between the people that but like, then you have like, you could go with other paths. Like my little brother, Nate, like his group of his quorum, they're still all in. I mean, it's like, so what's the difference between the people that stick with it? It's not spiritual experiences, because everyone has that. Some people that see angels fall away. Some people that, like Judas, who's with the Savior, fell away, right? So it's not spiritual experiences. It's the integrity, right? It's like, how much integrity do you hold towards the spiritual experiences in the faith? And like, even if you only have if you have only a little bit of faith, just demonstrating integrity towards it and hanging on. And, when there's something that you don't know, don't use that as an excuse to do something you shouldn't be doing, or vice versa, right? Like, don't use any questions you have to justify things that you need to be doing or you shouldn't be doing. I think that's what it comes down to. So I don't know. I'm glad that we got to share our testimonies. Like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for Christians all over the world right now. So yeah, hopefully one person hears this and it strengthens them just a little.
This episode is brought to you by Baseco. Baseco Foundation and Concrete Solutions specialize in foundation repair, waterproofing, and concrete lifting. They have the ability to lift settled or sinking foundations, permanently waterproof homes and structures, underpin and support new foundations and structures, erect sizable block retaining walls, and lift settled concrete slabs, including sidewalks, driveways, patios, and garage floors.
Yeah, I know Rock personally, and he's a close friend, and I wouldn't trust anyone else as a real estate investor the foundation's the most important piece, and it can make or break any deal. So we appreciate Baseco. This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up.